Welcome, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for coming here to Stories of Wrongful Conviction, Exoneration, and Hope in Missouri, where we're highlighting and celebrating the amazing and impactful work of the Midwest Innocence Project. Thank you so much for coming. But first, I have to let you know that we all are recording this event, but it's just on the stage. Okay, so everybody cool. Y'all don't have to worry about that. Okay, everybody like, hold up. So wait a minute. First, I want to thank Unlock Labs for creating this event and for the amazing work that they do. Right? But I can't thank them without thanking Miranda Gibson, who is head of Legal Services Department here at this wonderful library. And I'm talking about, if you haven't had the opportunity to tour this library, we are at the creme de la creme of libraries. Y'all might have been able to tell by the charging stations when you pulled up, because I had never seen that, right? But Miranda, and I have to read this because it's so important to highlight the reason why Unlock Labs decided to collab with this particular library. But Miranda and her team, they lead the Justice Service Department here at the library. Her team provides programs, services, and community resources designed to support individuals and families impacted by the criminal justice system. So their primary work is a bench warrant resolution program called the Tap-In Center. Instead of risking an interaction with law enforcement, people can work with Miranda and her team to get the warrant recalled. Wow, amazing. And right now, that department is hosting a small business launchpad program series upstairs. It's an opportunity for people with a conviction to learn how to start and grow their small businesses. So, I mean, amazing work. That is definitely the reason why Unlock Labs decided to host this event here, because of the service that they already provide, you know, for the people, especially the people that's been impacted by the justice system. So, with that being said, I'd like to thank them for just being gracious hosts and having all of us here in this amazing room and this amazing establishment. But our purpose here today is not only to highlight the crucial and significant work that Midwest Innocence Project does for those that have been impacted unjustifiably, wrongfully convicted, but it's also to hear the stories of those that have been, you know, incarcerated wrongfully for years and decades of their life. And one of those people right now is Rodney Lincoln, who we are just so blessed and honored to have the presence of right now. I'll let him tell his story because he can tell it way better than me, right? But also, we are being accompanied by such great performers as singer, amazing vocalist Lana Ray, and also we have keyboardist, songwriter, producer who just released the album as Ryan Marquez right now. That's who we've been listening to, so thank you so much for that. But so one thing about me, I don't like being behind the podium, so I'm gonna come out here, y'all. All right, let me relax a little bit, all right? Because I know I'm amongst family. One thing about me is that when I host anything, I like to interact with the people, right? Because that's all it's about the people, right? So one thing I would love for you all to do is engage in a quick exercise with me, if you will, right? I want you to imagine this. Imagine being 19, 20, 21 years old. You out with your family, maybe out on a date, you know, out enjoying the night, and then the police stop you, arrest you, question you over something that you have no idea what they're talking about. But because somebody has witnessed you, quote unquote, witnessed you or made a mistake identification to say that you were the perpetrator of a heinous crime that you know nothing about. Nothing about. And then, so now you're in jail. But you know what? Society has made us to believe that this is the justice system. You can't get convicted or tried or arrested for anything that you didn't do. Surely the justice system is going to work for me, right? So you're in jail or hold over. You go through the legal process of believing. Although you're upset, you're hurt, the pain, I can't even describe it, right? But those are the words that I'll try to use to explain it, right? But we're imagining, right? This is what so many people go through to today. Like not only just being in jail, but also getting convicted for somebody, eyewitness misidentification, official misconduct. Yes, the police, judges, and prosecutors do just try to convict people for a quota or for a number, right? But no, they surely wouldn't convict me because I didn't do it. Guess what? You take it to trial. You get convicted. And now you're faced with a sentence with more time than the number of years you have been on this earth. And sometimes what we call a sentence. Now, not just a regular prison sentence. That means life with parole or life without the eligibility of parole. You didn't do it. So now you're stuck in prison. You're even ashamed to even say that out loud because guess what? The stigma is everybody that's in prison say they didn't do it. So now you don't even want to say it out loud from embarrassment or anybody thinking besides the environment itself. Besides learning how to defend yourself or, live amongst this environment that you have to conform certain behaviors that you never knew in your whole life. Because guess what? You're not a criminal, right? You've never been to prison, but you find yourself in prison with this enormous time. And all you want somebody to do is just to hear you, hear your case, hear that I did not do this. But nobody's listening, right? Because society is not of the mindset to listen to anybody in prison, because if they were in prison, surely the justice system felt the reason why they should be in there. Guess what? I hope that you all have been paying attention to these monitors. I'm not going to read them. I'm sure when Mr. Tahir Atwater and his team come up here, along with Rodney Lincoln, who is the person that I'm talking about, along with a Lamar Johnson. Where you at, bro? There, along with a Lamar Johnson. Because this happens every day. We're just imagining right now. This happens every single day. So right now, while we're in this wonderful library, there are people that are sitting in a cell right now and waiting for organizations and people like the Midwest Innocence Project who are unsung heroes, who are changing lives, the voice of the voiceless, because surely who is going to listen to somebody in prison saying that they're innocent? So with all that being said, and I just went totally off cue because I'm so passionate about this that I said, forget what I wrote down. I'm sorry, y'all. I went off cue, but guess what? We're going to feel this today because I'm trying to put you in the mindset of what happens every single day. So with all that being said, let me introduce Mr. Chris Santillian, who is a co-founder of Unlock Labs and have an amazing story himself, but I'll let him come up and explain it to you. Come on, Chris.
Yeah, I don't like podiums either. Wow, it's great seeing everybody. Man, so many people. Good evening. As AJ said, I'm Chris Santillian, and I'm one of the co-founders of Unlock Labs. Now, if you haven't heard of us before tonight and seeing our logos and everything, and our table back there, I can probably explain why we exist by telling you why I'm standing here right now. I was incarcerated for 28 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections. And in my years there, education was the thing that fundamentally transformed the trajectory of my life. It gave me the way to see ideas, relationships, and eventually possibilities for my life that I couldn't really see from where I was standing. And from that experience, I was left with the belief that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. There are incredibly talented, motivated, and intelligent folks inside our prisons and jails. Now, what's often missing isn't their motivation. It is the infrastructure around these individuals. Their lack of access to education, technology, and relationships to give them a pathway to allow that potential to actually find itself somewhere. And so that's why Unlock Labs exists. We are comprised in large part by folks that were on the inside, that were impacted by the justice system, who know the issues and the problems of access to education on the inside. And today we work with correctional agencies, educators, technologists, and community partners to work together to build better systems for education and opportunity. Now, sometimes that's in the form of technology. We have built Unlock Ed, which is a secure portal to provide incarcerated learners access to educational resources that would be otherwise really, really difficult to get hold of. But it's more than technology. It's about infrastructure. It's about, you know what? I can explain what infrastructure is, but you don't really have to go far from this spot right here for me to illustrate what I'm talking about. Right here in St. Louis, with the Unlocking Opportunity Partnership with the Office of Violence Prevention, we have worked with the St. Louis City Justice Center to create a computer lab over the last year to provide access to educational resources through Unlock Ed. Now, on paper, it sounds simple. Just get a room, put a bunch of computers in it, give them access to educational resources, and be done with it. But anybody who's ever tried something new in a jail knows it doesn't work that way. Yeah, you need technology, sure. But you also need the space. You need the staff to help it go. You need to get folks from the housing unit to the computer lab. You need schedules. You need corrections leadership. You need educators, and you need community partners willing to work together to solve problems. And most importantly, you need to listen to the folks that were going to actually use the thing. And so that's what we did. And we observed residents using the computer lab to access education and cognitive behavior therapy resources, career preparation, trauma, wellness, parenting, landscaping, and anything that they were curious about. They told us what worked. They told us what didn't. And they told us what they wish they had access to next. And I think that's what I'm most proud of our work in CJC. Like, we could have gone into the jail and plunked something down that we thought they needed. But we worked and we learned with the people that lived and worked there to find out what was actually the need. And the conversations have developed beyond just one computer lab. People have started asking questions: how do we give more access to more people in CJC? How do we use technology to better support GED preparation and other programming? And how do we make someone's learning and progress visible instead of just disappearing whenever they change to another program or perhaps to another institution, so that it remains with them and they have proof? They have a criminal record, why don't we have an achievement record? And so that's what I'm talking about when I talk about infrastructure. It's not just computers. It's not just software. It's technology and relationships and data and programs and people all working together to make the system better. And that's what I think tonight and our relationship with the Midwest Innocence Project is really all about. Because, to be fair, Midwest Innocence Project and Unlock Labs do two very important but different work. The Midwest Innocence Project fights for those that are wrongly convicted and addresses the issues in that justice system that have caused those injustices to perpetuate in the first place. At Unlock Labs, we base ourselves on a different question. While folks are already in the system, how do we ensure that they still have access to education, opportunity, and a pathway to a meaningful life? Two very different questions, but I think they are based on the same belief. It's the belief that people that are involved in the justice system aren't problems to be solved. They have knowledge, they have agency, and they have the voice that should and needs to be part of the table to make things better. I myself was on the receiving end of the correctional system for 28 years. And now, I get the chance to redesign a small part of that. So when we're here, when this event was first imagined, the Midwest Innocence Project was under threat for their work here in Missouri. Thankfully, we're gathered here under different circumstances, and that's a reason to celebrate. But keeping the lights on isn't the same thing as the work being finished. And so while we're here, not just in response to a crisis, but it's an opportunity for the people of St. Louis to know and understand and find out what the Midwest Innocence Project does, talk to the people who make it go, hear the real stories of individuals that are impacted by the justice system, and hopefully decide that this is work that continues and that you continue to support and be close to, and that it's worth your time and energy. We at Unlock Labs have this core belief, and that belief is that a better justice system has to be built from the inside. Folks on the inside, folks that are closest to the problem, be that through lived experience, through professional experience, have an understanding of the problems that people on the outside looking in just don't have. And so that's a belief that we have at Unlock Labs. That's that's inherent in everybody that works and builds Unlock Labs. That's true of the people that you will hear from today. And that's why we are proud and honored to be sharing a room, not only with the Midwest Innocence Project, also Keyway, Prison Performing Arts, St. Louis County Library, because we're coming together to make this system better. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. And thank Unlock Labs for, like I said, creating this event along with St. Louis County Library. But now, we are talking about hope. We are talking about resiliency. We are talking about the consistency of those that work every single day to prove the innocent of those that have been wrongfully convicted, sometimes for decades, sometimes for a lifetime, right? But what better way to talk about and express hope through the universal language of music, right? Y'all know what time it is, right? Y'all do know what time it is, right? Okay, we got Miss Lana Ray, like I said, amazing vocalist, here to share her gift with you, along with our brother Ryan Marquez, keyboardist. Let's go.
Good evening. How y'all doing tonight? All right, you ready? Amazing taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour my first belief. Amazing grace, how sweet that sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Miss Lana Ray, y'all. You know, Miss Lana Ray, y'all, with Ryan Marquez on the keyboard. They set the tone. It's kind of hard to come after that, right? I'm going to try, though, because now we're ready for the people that we're all here to celebrate, right? The organization that's been doing it for at least 25 years. So instrumental, so essential. I want to thank you all myself. I actually have a personal story that they don't even know about this. I, too, was incarcerated for 22 years of my life. And like Mr. Lincoln that you're going to meet, like Mr. Lamar Johnson, and so many countless others, I honestly didn't do it. I actually reached out to the Midwest Innocence Project. I tried to find a letter because although they weren't able to get to my case directly, because you got so many people from around the region, and they'll let you know, that's reaching out to them, you know, with actual innocence claims and everything. So, but because of the lack of staff and support and resources and money that it takes to focus on each case, you know, they're not able to get to everyone. So I was one of those ones, but let me tell you something. I was telling you about that moment of hopelessness, and there were times when I was in prison, like I said, the reason why I was able to speak on it because I went through it, right? But when I went through it, I used to get letters every now and then from the Midwest Innocence Project. I think her name was Miss Trisha. You remember? Yeah. So I used to get that sign of hope. And although they weren't telling me that they were taking my case directly, they were still letting me know, listen, we haven't forgot about you. But at the same time, we're not able to do it directly, but here are some more resources. That in itself meant everything to me. You know what I mean? Like, that meant everything to me. So with no further ado, the people that we are here to celebrate, you know, Mr. Tahir Atwater and his team. I'll let them introduce themselves, okay?
Community is a powerful thing. How are you all doing? We are walking a little slowly because we were a little nervous. We didn't know we were going to have that much of an intro. We had music, I spoke to AJ beforehand, and he said, I don't know what I'm going to say. And then he gets up and delivers a whole sermon. So we were all getting up going, okay, I don't know if we can live up to this, but we're going to try. No, I know we can because the work matters. Again, I want to say thank you so much for all of you being here. I want to give a really big shout out to Rosa and Unlock Labs. So as some of you may know, we sent out a big signal flare at the beginning of July saying that we need help. We're not alone in that. The good news is we're not alone. The bad news is we're not alone. We know that all across this country right now, there are amazing organizations like ours and like all of those that you see there who are trying to find that path forward. And Unlock Labs, another nonprofit, they did not have a scarcity mindset. They did not say that we're in this just for ourselves. They reached out to us immediately and they said, what can we do to help? Let's bring you out here and we're gonna host you. I argued with Rosa for the last 3 weeks, and I said, can we please make sure that you all get up and talk about the work? And they said, no, we're not gonna say anything about us, it's all you. Then I talked to Miranda at the library, same thing. We're in your house. They said, no, it's all about you. But luckily you had a chance to hear from Chris, Unlock Labs. If you haven't had a chance before you leave here tonight, after our conversation, please make a point to reach out to every single one of these tables. I guarantee you that every single organization out there today could use your volunteerism, they could use your dollars, they could use you spreading awareness. All right, we can all agree to that? Yes. All right, so I'm gonna sit down because I cannot follow AJ. I'm not even gonna try. But I wanna introduce you all to my friends and colleagues up here on the stage. So first off, to my right is Mr. Matthew Jacober. He's a litigator and partner at Lathrop GPM, and he's also the board chair for the Midwest Innocence Project. He's a Missouri State Court approved mediator and a passionate advocate for the wrongfully convicted, and I can attest to that. These aren't just words on a page. He continues to work pro bono, that means for free, for others who have been unjustly imprisoned, and that demonstrates his deep commitment to justice in all forms. Mr. Matthew Jacober.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Tahir.
So next to Matt, I'm sorry, I should say Matthew. We like to say Matthew. It sounds a bit more formal.
You
Can I say Matt? Okay, so next to Matt, we have Rachel Wester. Rachel is, I don't know why I'm reading this as if I don't know who Rachel is. Rachel is the legal director for the Midwest Innocence Project. She will be celebrating her 12th year on staff coming up this next year. Yes, please, go ahead and give applause, please. In her role, she maintains an active caseload. That's such an understatement, an active caseload, a very, very big caseload, while also supervising our legal staff and interns, overseeing all aspects of prioritizing, reviewing, investigating, and litigating all of our post-conviction innocence cases across the organization. I want to seize on that word for just a moment, innocence cases. Every single person that we work with, every client we serve has a claim of innocence. Rachel started her legal career with MIP in 2015. She previously served as staff attorney, Nebraska managing attorney, and managing attorney. Since that time, Rachel has been a part of many exonerations and client releases, including Mr. Rodney Lincoln, John Brown, Ricky Kidd, Michael Poley, and Christopher Dunn. She remains passionate, I hope so, about ensuring truth, fairness, and accountability in the criminal legal system. As a first-generation college graduate, Rachel is proud to have earned her Juris Doctor from the University of Virginia School of Law and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Speech Communication from Columbia College. Mrs. Rachel Wester.
Thanks, y'all. Happy to be here.
And our man of the hour, Mr. Rodney Lincoln. Oftentimes when we talk about our clients and friends, we immediately say their name and we talk about trauma. We talk about how many years they've served. This is a whole person up here. So I want to start with the Rodney Lincoln I've had a chance to know. Rodney is a skydiver. That's right. Favorite movie, Hang 'em High. Clint Eastwood, anyone else seen it? Okay, you can just say you have, even if you haven't, okay? He said one of his passions, I think you can tell, because I asked him, what are some of your passions? And he said, look at me, fashion. It's sharp, okay? We are in the library. I happen to be married to a world-class librarian, so as far as one of his greatest hobbies, he loves to read novels, mysteries, suspense, and he loves a good biography, including your favorite, Audie Murphy, the most decorated soldier from World War II, correct? All right. So I've asked Rodney, I've been skydiving once. Molly back there, who works with us at Midwest Innocence Project, has also been skydiving, so we're trying to put together a community of skydivers. But we're not here to talk about that tonight, I just want to say that. I would be remiss if I didn't say my name is Tahir Atwater. I'm the executive director for the Midwest Innocence Project, and I'm so glad that you all are here with me tonight. So give yourselves a round of applause, and we'll get started. So just so you have some context, so the Midwest Innocence Project, as AJ said, has been around for 25 years. We work in 5 states, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, and Arkansas. We have over 900 people on our waiting lists. We have 21 active cases right now in either stage of investigation or litigation. So when I say to you we have 900 people on our waiting list and we're doing this work across 5 states, surely you're imagining a staff of roughly 100, 200 people. And instead, you see, well, Rachel and I make up 2 of the 8 staff, paid staff, right? Molly is one of our legal fellows. We actually have some of our former co-workers here. Jason, where are you at? There's Jason. There's Luke, right? Jason is an attorney. Luke was an investigator. We have a huge partnership spread across those 5 states. So I want you to kind of have that context as Matt and Rachel and Rodney talk about their experiences, that this is a very small group of people doing a lot of important work. Rodney, I want to start with you. Is that all right? Okay. I told people a little bit about who you are outside of your experience, but in your own words, before any of this touched your life, who were you? What did your days look like?
I think, to be perfectly honest, I was a mischievous, fun-loving, quite obnoxious person. But by being obnoxious, I did so in such a way I made people laugh. You know, when someone's aggravating you and you ask them to stop and they won't stop, after you ask them 4 or 5 times, you start smiling or swinging, one or the other. Luckily for me, most of the time they smile. I was a person who didn't go out of my way to let people know that I was there. But I did go out of my way to make people look at me. I enjoyed being noticed. Whether it was for the right reasons or not, it was another story.
Well, when you're dressed like that, you're going to be noticed. Rachel, for you, you're coming up on 12 years with Midwest Innocence Project. 12 years ago, what drew you to this? Because this is the kind of work where most people turn away, and we're in a room full of people who chose not to turn away. So 12 years ago, why did you not turn away?
Yeah, as Tahir said, I'm a first-generation college student, so I went to law school really having no idea what I wanted to do, but I had an inclination. I was interested in criminal law, and I happened to get lucky, and I had a really incredible internship experience in law school where I did death penalty litigation work for a summer. Oh, I think my mic went out. Oh, there we are. And I got to do a lot of post-conviction work. I got to do some investigation. I went out and interviewed witnesses and jurors, and the most impactful experience I had was that I got to go to prison and meet my clients who were men who were condemned to die. And honestly, as cliche as it sounds, I really just had a life-changing experience that summer and thought, if there's any way I can do this, I want to do it. And fast forward a couple of years, right when I graduated, I was fortunate again. There was a staff attorney position open at the Midwest Innocence Project. And I interviewed, I got the job, and I've never looked back. And to this day, the clients are what keeps me in the work. If I'm feeling overwhelmed or burnt out or tired, I have to put myself in the mindset of what my clients are experiencing every single day, right? And if they can get through what they're going through, I can keep going too. So they're what keeps me in it every day.
Right on. I'm hearing that from people. Yes, you're feeling that. Yes. So Matt, you are board chair for MIP, but you also serve as co-lead on. You've served as lead on some of our cases. What drew you to the work, and how does being a board chair actually maybe change how you look at the work, or does it just make it more impactful for you?
So what drew me to the work initially was about a little over 10 years ago, I was with one of my partners, and we were waiting to see a judge, and he and I started talking. And I mentioned that he's from Kansas City, and I mentioned that I wanted to find a new pro bono effort, that I'd done a lot of different pro bono work, but I wanted to find something that I could really dig my hands into. And he suggested that I call Tricia Bushnell, who is the former executive director and legal director at MIP. So that afternoon, I called her and introduced myself and said, I want to get involved. I want to help on a case. I want to get my firm involved in a case. Do you have room on anything that's going on right now? She did. And we jumped right in and worked on the Faye Jacobs case down in Arkansas, and helped Faye navigate a very difficult decision that she had to make. At the time, she had a federal habeas corpus petition that was on file. We were getting close to having a hearing in that, and we also had a resentencing motion in front of the state court. Faye was convicted of murder, wrongfully convicted of murder when she was arrested when she was 16, convicted when she was 17. And there's Supreme Court case law since the time of her conviction that says we don't sentence minors to life without the possibility of parole. So she was eligible for resentencing. And Tricia was trying to get a hold of the prosecutor. The prosecutor was ignoring her. A whole nother story that I don't think needs to be aired publicly. But one day Tricia called me in frustration. We were working primarily on the federal matter. Tricia called me in frustration, and I'll edit. This guy won't call me back. Will you try to give him a call?
That's a good edit.
Anyone who knows Tricia knows what she said. And so I did. I called him, left him a voicemail. He called me back that afternoon. Tricia had been trying to get a hold of him for weeks, maybe months. And he said, well, what do you want? And I explained what we wanted, and he said, well, why don't I writ Faye up next week, and we'll resentence her to time served, and she can walk out of prison. I said, okay, not what I was expecting to hear. So I said, let me call my team and I'll get back to you. So I called Tricia. She responded with several expletives.
I don't feel like we're painting the best picture of Tricia right now. It's like
exciting ones.
Yes.
But very frustrated that this guy wouldn't call her back, and he called me back. But we said, absolutely, writ her up. We can't commit because we don't have time to talk to Faye that she'll accept this, but writ her up. And then we met with Faye in the basement holding cell at the Little Rock courthouse, explained her options. You can be resentenced today, be released, but your habeas corpus petition is gone. You will never be able to prove in court that you were wrongfully convicted. Your only option to have your conviction removed will be to get a commutation from the governor. And Faye at the time had ailing parents that she really wanted to get home to so she could help. She made a very incredibly difficult decision to accept the resentencing, so we walked upstairs. She was resentenced, and she was processed out of prison that afternoon. And that was it for me. I was doomed. Like Rachel said, it changes your life in an incredible way, because as much as you give in lending your legal skills to people who are wrongfully convicted, you get it back 1,000-fold from getting to know these folks and understanding really what resilience and grace and courage and never giving up actually means.
Yep.
So that's kind of my story as to why I do the work, and how my dual role as being a lawyer that does the work on a pro bono basis and being the board chair. I think it helps in my role as the board chair, because my focus is always on the mission of Midwest Innocence Project, and the mission is such an incredible one that is so needed that I think it's helpful for the board to remain laser focused on the mission.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. As we're sitting here, what crosses my mind is the four of us should not be up here. I don't mean because of the event, but there should not be a reason for us to be on the stage. The reason why the Midwest Innocence Project exists is to right the wrongs that should never have happened in the first place. So the work that Rachel has been doing for 12 plus years shouldn't have happened. The work that Matt's been a part of for all these years shouldn't have happened. Surely what happened to Rodney should never have happened. I wanted to start off by talking about the man that I know now, but now we're going to speak a little bit to why Rodney is on the stage. Rodney spent over 3 decades in prison for a crime he did not commit. Rodney, you heard the reaction from everyone. What kept you focused on the truth of your innocence over the course of 3 decades, especially in a system that's so often built to wear you down, and you didn't get worn down, you stood tall?
Well, to be perfectly honest, I didn't keep hope for 3 decades. I lost hope. I lost myself. I lost any desires that normal people have. I say that because I was not a normal person. I was a person filled with hate. I was a person filled with anger. I wanted to destroy everything and everyone who had ever hurt me. But I was also incredibly lucky. I had a family that refused to give up on me. I had friends and supporters that stayed with me and stayed after me. I cannot count the letters and cards that I received. Keep your head up. Stay strong. Keep fighting. We are with you. It took me almost 10 years before I had any hope whatsoever. And the way that came about is my daughter started a support group for me on Facebook. And she came up to visit one day, and she said, one of your supporters wants to know if they can write you a letter. I said, well, okay. I just don't want to get caught up writing letters every day. So she told her, I got a letter from her. I answered it. But pretty soon I got a letter from her and someone else. So I answered them. Guess what I did? I ended up writing every day. But when you receive anywhere from 5 to 15 letters a day, you gotta answer them. And they brought me hope that there's somebody out there that cares. And that little bit of hope started growing. And then MIP stepped in. I never will forget the first visit I had was from then Director Bill Gibson. And he said to me, I'm not going to ask you if you're innocent or not. We are going to get tests run that will tell the answer. And any time during this investigation you wish for us to stop, you let us know and we will stop. My answer to him was, Phil, I want you to take a long, good look at my case. And then you tell me. Well, MIP worked with my case for years. There was a short period there that was having some internal problems. About 5 years, it wasn't working on it, but they came back to it and they started working on it. And they never gave up. And when I say they never gave up, I mean they never gave up. You see, they're still working on it today. I was never exonerated. Governor Guyton commuted my sentence to time served. So in the eyes of the state of Missouri, I'm still guilty. I'm still convicted. But MIP is still fighting to change that. And we're fighting to change one law, where the state cannot use a person's sentence to refuse to release him for innocence. If I had life in, if I had the death sentence, I've been eligible for release. But I didn't. I had 15, life, and life running consecutive. Or as we say inside, running wild. Well, let me tell you something. That is the death sentence on the installment plan. And if it wasn't for the work of MIP and my supporters and my family to raise my hope, to make me feel I've got a chance, guess what? I made it.
That's right. Rachel, when I spoke to Corey briefly from back there with Unlocked, Corey, there you are. And Corey said that for himself and for a lot of people who are incarcerated, they have two hopes towards the end, either the president or MIP. His words, not mine. I won't make any political references here, but I'll just say that MIP is definitely the way to go when seeking assistance like that. Rachel, when we think about Rodney spending over 3 decades in prison for a crime he did not commit, when we think of our friend Lamar Johnson, who was here, who was in prison for over 23 years, was exonerated, what are you looking for when those 900 people are in these waiting lists and we're trying to make our way through, and we can't get to all of them, right, as AJ said and as Corey said, but what are you looking for when you decide, yes, this is a case we can take on?
Yeah, we have a very robust process at MIP because, as we've talked about, we have 900 folks who are on a waiting list and we have 8 staff members. And so somehow we have to take that very large list of 900 cases and we have to vet them and we have to figure out what can we do, right? So we have a 4-step process. Everybody who is waiting for assistance fills out an application. They have to meet some very basic criteria, one of which, as Tahir mentioned, is that you have to be claiming actual factual innocence. So we don't take cases where someone was a party to the crime, where there's a consent defense, et cetera. You have to be saying, I didn't have anything to do with it whatsoever. And then if you meet those criteria, you move to the next stage in the process. I should also mention one of the criteria at the initial stage is that at the time you apply for assistance with us, you have to have at least 10 years left on your sentence. And that's because with our current staff and our current wait list, it will take us at least 10 years to get to your case from the moment you apply. And honestly, probably longer. So then we move on to the real vetting process. We do what we call screening. We have volunteers, pro bono lawyers, law students who take a deep dive into a case for the first time. They review trial transcripts and police reports and lab reports and appellate records. They write a memo for us, they do a presentation for the legal staff, and we try to figure out, is there anything here? And at that stage, we start to look for the hallmarks of wrongful conviction. So there are some wrongful conviction contributing factors that we can see across cases. If we take a look at all 3,500 or so exonerations that have occurred in the US since we started keeping track in the early 1980s. And with those are eyewitness misidentification. It's the leading contributing factor in cases where there's DNA evidence. Both Rodney's case and Lamar's case involved eyewitness misidentification. Flawed forensic science, so an analyst that maybe is testifying that 2 shoe prints or bite marks, or in Rodney's case, 2 pieces of hair from a crime scene match. And we shouldn't be saying things like that on the stand. We don't know that those 2 things match, to the exclusion of all other pieces of hair or shoe prints or bite marks. State misconduct. That is the biggest contributing factor to wrongful convictions across the board. And that is when a police department or a prosecutor's office typically withhold evidence from the defense that they should have disclosed at the time of trial. False confessions. False confessions, I think sometimes we imagine, oh, I would never falsely confess. That has to be pretty rare, and that's not true. If you look at DNA exonerations across the country, false confessions happen in about 1 in 4 of those cases. And then lastly, we want to take a look at incentivized witnesses. Lamar's case had this as well. Typically what we see here is that in the 11th hour, in a case that's maybe circumstantial, all of a sudden a jailhouse informant comes forward and they say, oh, I heard the defendant confess while I was next to them, right? And then in exchange for their testimony, they get some sort of benefit, a sentence reduction, a letter to the parole board, et cetera. So when we screen cases, we look for those 5 hallmarks or contributing factors. If we see those pop up, those are red flags to us, and we'll move a case forward to the next stage. We have a big waiting list at that stage because after that, we take on a case and we do active investigation and then ultimately litigation. The investigation itself can take years. We go out into the field, we talk to witnesses, we consult with experts about an issue like flawed forensic science or eyewitness misidentification. If there's DNA testing to be done in a case, we'll do that. And then if at the end of all of that, of years and years and years of vetting and work, we think we can actually go into court and prove that someone's innocent, we go into litigation. And I won't get into that now because we'll talk about it later, but the litigation in and of itself also takes a very, very, very long time. I started at MIP in 2015. Lamar's case was one of 2 that I started on my first day in office, and Lamar was not exonerated until 2023. So cases take a very, very long time. Our internal process takes some time, but then we spend years just on the court process itself.
None of that sounded easy, right? This is 900 people who are in line to get into a line, to get into a line, to hopefully get back into court to right a wrong that should never have occurred. I want to do a quick time check. Miranda, how are we on time? Are we okay? I want to make sure we have time for questions. We're good? Okay. All right. Matt, you've worked on several of MIP's cases. When you took your first case, you talked about Faye Jacobs. What was probably the biggest surprise for you?
I think the biggest surprise, and it continues to be a surprise with each client I represent, is how someone who's been wrongfully convicted and locked behind bars can maintain their sense of humanity and cannot be overwhelmed or overcome by anger and hatred and resentment. That to me, that will never cease to amaze me, that somebody who's been so wronged can maintain that hope and maintain their personhood, because I try to put myself in my client's shoes as much as I can, and I don't think I could do that. I don't think I would have that strength or that power to remain positive and to not be angry at the world and to not lash out. So that's really what, and every client I've represented, it's there.
Rodney, back to you, and then we'll get into the next set of questions. What was it like the day you walked out? Knowing that the record still didn't reflect the truth, but nevertheless you were walking out. What was that day like for you?
Confusing, joyful. I was the happiest guy on earth. I was still angry because I knew I was getting out of prison, but I wasn't getting out of the eye of my conviction. But I'll take that. I walked out with my 2 daughters, my grandson, my favorite attorney. Well, one of my favorite attorneys. Sean O'Brien is one of my favorite attorneys. Also with Tricia. Tricia was there, Sean was there, my 2 daughters, my grandson. I walked out, and there's 3 correctional officers that walked out behind us. Well, they stayed up by the door as we walked out onto the drive. And there was a guy there to interview me. And after the interview, I walked back to the 3 correctional officers. I told one of them, if it's okay, I'd like to shake your hand, because you are one who has always treated me with respect. And I appreciate it. I shook his hand. The officer standing beside him stuck out his hand. and I turned away. I do want to shake his hand because he did not deserve to shake my hand. He was one of those that did not respect me and many of the other inmates. He was an officer who thought he had authority and power. In actuality, he had a 9 to 5 like millions of other people. When I got back to my daughters, my oldest daughter, Kay, asked me, why did you do that? I said, because he deserved it. I'm free today because I deserve to be free. He deserved my respect because he gave me his. Now, I've been back to the prison several times to visit. And every time I go back to that prison to visit, this same officer will walk up to me, say, hello, Mr. Lincoln, and shake my hand. And then you walk away from me. He doesn't want to talk and let other people know I'm a former inmate. That is respect. Now, I want to say something before I forget it, which I do a lot of, to the young sister that sang for us tonight. That was amazing. I don't like to admit to having tears in my eyes, but that brought tears to my eyes. I want you to know they were tears of joy. Thank you.
You were using the modulation with the voice. I hear that. We got to hear during the sound check, so we got very, very lucky. I want to make sure we have time left for some questions, so I want to ask just 2 more questions of Rachel and Matt, and then we'll see if there are any audience questions. Rachel, just go off script a little bit. Rodney spoke to this a bit earlier about that law, and it's really difficult for all of us, and it doesn't make any sense. It's not going to make any sense after Rachel explains it, and you'll know what that means in a moment. But what is it about the state of Missouri specifically that makes our work so difficult?
Sure. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Rodney's case as an example. And I will do this very briefly or as briefly as possible. So Rodney was wrongfully convicted of a 1982 murder of a woman named Joanne Tate and an attack on her 2 young children who were 4 and 7 years old at the time. And the main pieces of evidence against Rodney at trial were 2 things. A eyewitness identification that was incredibly flawed and incredibly coerced by the 7-year-old victim. When she did her identification of Rodney, she was shown only 2 photographs, a black and white photo of Rodney and a color photograph of her relative. And she picked Rodney, unsurprisingly. And the second piece of evidence against Rodney was a piece of hair that I alluded to earlier. So there was a piece of hair that was found at the crime scene. They took a piece of hair from Rodney. They compared those 2 hairs under a microscope. And at his convicting trial, an analyst got on the stand and testified that those 2 hairs matched and that the hair at the crime scene could only have come from Mr. Lincoln. So fast forward to 2012, as Rodney said, we did DNA testing in his case first. And we took that hair and we DNA tested it. And lo and behold, it did not belong to Rodney Lincoln. The DNA testing of that hair showed that it belonged to an unknown third-party male. We don't know who it belongs to, but it was not Rodney. And the court said at that time, sorry, that's not enough. The eyewitness identification of the 7-year-old was the linchpin of the state's case, so the DNA results don't matter. So we kept going, and eventually, years and years and years later, the 7-year-old surviving victim, who is now an adult woman, recanted her identification of Mr. Lincoln. And we also found a bunch of additional evidence to support that her identification she made when she was 7 was unreliable and coerced. So we went back to court again, and we relied on a case called Amrine that had previously said in Missouri, Mr. Amrine was convicted and sentenced to death. And he was released because he went back to the court and said, no evidence remains to convict me. Nothing is left. All these people that testified against me recanted, set me free. And the Missouri Supreme Court said, you're right. And they let him go. They said, based on innocence alone, you've been sentenced to death, you can get out. So we went back to court, and relying on the Amrine case, we said we're in the same spot. There were 2 pieces of evidence against Rodney at trial. Those 2 pieces of evidence are gone. The hair is gone, doesn't belong to him. The identification is gone. No credible evidence remains to convict Mr. Lincoln. And we lost. The court said, wait a minute, the Amrine case was about someone who was sentenced to death. Rodney had been sentenced to die in prison by a term of years. And so the law, as it stands today in Missouri, is that if you have been sentenced to anything other than death, you might not be able to use innocence, and you probably can't use innocence as a way to get relief. And Missouri is the only state in the country that makes that specific distinction. It is very hard to do this work and to litigate in post-conviction everywhere, in all 5 states where we work. But Missouri has this very interesting nuance where we're dealing with the law that came from Rodney's case that says that if you have been sentenced to something other than death, your innocence is not enough for you to get relief.
Like I said, does it make sense? Right. So the next time you're watching Law and Order and someone says, wait, judge, we found evidence, and the judge goes, oh, you're right, and they walk out by the end of the episode, go ahead and multiply that by about 20, 30 years. And in the state of Missouri, the judge doesn't take a look at that evidence, sometimes. Matt, before we turn it over to the audience for any questions, another question for you is, when you think about the work you do, one thing I've been told is that in the world of attorneys, in the world of lawyers, you can tell I'm not a lawyer the way I just said that, doing this kind of work is kind of rare. There aren't a lot of attorneys who do this work. When you're talking to other attorneys about this work, what is their reaction to it? Do you find that people have an understanding of the work we do, or are there a lot of misconceptions about what habeas work or innocence work actually entails?
Well, I think, all lawyers went to law school. Everybody took constitutional law, everybody took criminal law, and everybody had to study that for the bar. So, yeah, I think all lawyers understand the intersection of the constitutional law issues and criminal defense issues that are embedded in innocence work. And everyone understands how challenging it is, I think, generally speaking. What I experience a lot is, that these cases, when they're successful, they get press, sometimes internal press inside my firm, sometimes external press, frequently external press. And I'll have a lot of people reach out to me and talk to me because they see the end. They see the picture of Lamar and I walking out of the courthouse together, and Lamar's got the biggest smile in the world on his face.
There's a
Hard
smile.
not to.
There's a smile right there.
I knew I
There
was
it is.
just working to get that smile. It's a great smile.
He was trying to keep a straight face.
It
He
is a
couldn't do
great
it.
smile. So you see that, and as a lawyer, you're thinking, wow, that looks really cool. And people will reach out, younger lawyers in my firm, which is not everyone, but becoming more every day, or lawyers that I know in the community, they'll reach out and talk about, can I get involved? And my answer is always, absolutely you can, but I want to let you know what it's really like. I worked on Lamar's case for 6 years, I want to say, 7 years. And I always tell people this, that, you investigate the case, or MIP investigates the case, and you trust in their system, so you're convinced that this is an innocent person. Then you go to the prison and you spend time, get to know them, you talk to them. And then you realize all the stuff I said earlier about what you get from those clients. And then you leave. You get in your car and you drive home, and you go home to your family and have dinner. And every time, I'm going to get emotional, every time I would leave when I visited Lamar or any client, just a piece of your heart dies. And then between Lamar's hearing and Lamar's release on Valentine's Day of 2023,
He's smiling again.
I was the member of the team who was in St. Louis. So I went to visit Lamar in jail in downtown St. Louis as often as I could, just really to help Lamar's sanity stay in check and to keep him, so he knew that somebody was still there. Excuse me. And again, every time I left, another piece of my heart died, and it doesn't come back. And so I consciously tell people that, and lawyers who want to get involved, and then all of a sudden they're like, you know what? Maybe it's not for me. Because it's the win is great. The losses are horrible. I worked on the Marcellus Williams case. I was the special counsel for innocence for St. Louis County. So I was advocating on behalf of St. Louis County against the state of Missouri. And I can't make that make any more sense than what Rachel just tried to make Rodney's case make sense. But in Missouri, we have an attorney general's office who has a habeas unit who violently opposes any litigation where someone is claiming that they should not be incarcerated. No matter what the evidence says, no matter what is presented in court, they are going to oppose it, they are going to appeal it, they are going to fight it as long as they possibly can. So I was on the team I litigated the Marcellus Williams case, and that was not a good result. Mr. Williams was executed by the state. And I'm always careful to tell people about the hard part of the wins and that there are losses. And that, fortunately or not, discourages people. I'm not sure what it says about Rachel and I that we're still willing to do it even though we fully understand it, other than the knowing that you have a part in making the justice system just a little more just is enough for me. And if you're willing to take the difficult parts of that, you know that you're making the world a little bit better. And to me, that's worth it.
Well said. I know we're getting close to time. I don't know if we have time for audience questions. However, remember, you all made a promise that before you left.
Thumbs up on audience questions.
We're okay. Okay, good. Before you all leave, remember, you made a promise, whether you know it or not, that you will visit our friends over here, right? Okay. So there's a final question that I'm going to give to you all now so you can think about it while we get the Q&A, okay? And that is, what do you want this room to actually do with what they heard tonight beyond just being moved by it? So that'll be the last piece. Just keep that in mind. Rodney's going to get the closer because that's what he is. He's the closer. All right. So before we get to that last question, do we have any questions from the audience?
And if you will, just raise your hand. I'll come to you.
Thank
I
you,
see
AJ.
two hands already. All right. Excuse me. Can you say your name? Excuse me, Queen. Can you say your name? You mind signing and saying no? You want to say that?
My name is Ann, and I would like to ask if your small staff is due to a lack of willing attorneys or due to a lack of money?
Lack of money.
Money.
Money,
Money.
100%.
We're going to keep saying money.
Yeah.
We have attorneys like Matt, pro bono, but it's a lot of work, so money. I don't know if I said that, but it's money.
I don't understand how, if innocence is absolutely proven, why they can't just walk out. I thought that when DNA was brought into life in the prisons, that there were a lot of people that just walked out because they were proven innocent. What would it take in the state of Missouri, like would a ballot measure do for people to sign a petition or whatever, get big numbers to where if innocence is proven, that they automatically get out, they don't need a trial? I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make sense. I wish I could make it make sense, but it is nonsensical in so many ways. But the answer to what we can do is try to change the law, right? And that requires citizen and constituent support. So call your representatives, call the Attorney General's office, call people that you can, let people know about this issue and that we are working within a system that makes no sense to you, right? And that can help. We have tried ever since Rodney's case happened years ago to do whatever we could to make a pathway. We now have a law in Missouri, as Matt mentioned, that allows for a local prosecutor to bring evidence of someone's innocence, and so that gives us an additional way to get back into court. But unfortunately, it is never just as simple as, oh, we did DNA testing, let's let them go. And even to get DNA testing is a fight. So to get DNA testing in Missouri, you have to go to court and litigate. You have to go to court, you have to file a motion for DNA testing. You're gonna maybe fight with the local prosecutor over whether you can do that testing at all. It costs money to do that testing, and then you have to litigate what the results of that testing mean, and it may or may not be enough. So it's very complex and complicated.
I think we all can agree that that does not make sense, right?
Why is the state of Missouri so opposed to the reasonable?
Well, their stated reason is
Yeah.
they believe that it is important that jury verdicts are respected and that there is finality in the criminal justice system. Pardon my language, that's a bunch of bullshit. It's because they believe that no one who is in prison could possibly be innocent. That is just the view of the Attorney General's office, and it's not just this Attorney General. This is a view that has existed in that office for as long as I've been practicing law, and we have Judge Wolf here in the audience, and he's shaking his head, I think as long as he remembers, and he's been around a day or two longer than me. It's just the approach of the Missouri Attorney General's office.
I'm going to try to save you all some pain. You're trying to make sense of it, right? You're trying to find the logic. There is no logic here.
This is also from the average person thinks that the government really has a hard time getting anything right, except this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
100%.
Right.
Yes.
AJ, we have someone who had their hand up at the very back. Is that Erica? Yes, there's Erica. Okay.
My question is, we talk about bad prosecutors holding back information, or why are they never punished? You know, it happens a lot, it seems like, and nothing happens to them.
Yes, so prosecutors have absolute immunity. So unless a prosecutor does something that is actually criminal and against the law in that way, they will not face consequences. So we all the time bring what we call a Brady violation claim, which is that the state, the prosecutor, or the police withheld evidence and did not disclose it. And certainly there's publicity about those cases, et cetera, but in terms of actual consequences for prosecutors, they have absolute immunity.
Erica, yes.
Hi. I have a question just regarding when you talk about the time span that it takes from start to finish for a case. As those who work in the system, we know that the wheels of justice are very slow to turn. But would you say that the period of time is not just because of litigation in court, maybe for also as a contributing factor, the labs and things that it takes to, the time it takes to get things back and things of that nature? Is that kind of what expands the period of time it takes to complete a case?
Yes, certainly. It's all of those things. It takes time to just collect records, right? We're talking about, for example, in Rodney's case, a case that happened in the early 80s. And we're coming on 20 years later and trying to figure out what in the world happened here. And so just the process of collecting transcripts, police reports, lab reports, finding the names of witnesses we need to talk to, and then figuring out where are those witnesses, where do they live, how can we find them, all of that takes an enormous amount of time and money. Those records are not free. And then, right, it takes time to consult with an expert. It takes time for a lab to get back to us. Courts take time. Hearings take time. And in addition to the Attorney General's office making it difficult at every step of the way for our clients, also sometimes that means there's delay, right? They're asking for continuances, asking to move a hearing back, et cetera. And so we're working as fast as we can with the amount of staff and resources that we have. But to some extent, we are part of the criminal legal system, right? And we're at the mercy of how quickly or how slow that goes.
Yeah, and courts just inherently move slow. There are a lot of cases that are pending. There aren't enough judges. So litigation moves slow no matter if it's wrongful conviction or a contract action. That's just the nature of litigation, unfortunately. But to a case we just tried in early May in Wyandotte County, Kansas, for a client named Selster McKinney. Mr. McKinney was wrongfully convicted of a murder he didn't commit, and he spent a long time in prison, and he filed his own habeas petition, pro se, and it was reviewed and automatically rejected by the court. He appealed that. The Court of Appeals said, there's something here, it needs to go back. And he needs to have a hearing. So at that point, Les was able to secure a private attorney who worked pro bono for him, and he had a hearing. A 2-day hearing back in 2020?
2020, I think.
2020. And he lost that hearing. At that point, MIP got involved, and Kansas has, it's called a Van Cleve motion, where you can petition to the Court of Appeals to do that over again because there's ineffective assistance of counsel. We won that Van Cleve motion in front of the Court of Appeals. They sent it back for another hearing. We had a hearing in early May where we put on 4 days of evidence, and we not only proved, at least in my humble opinion, we not only proved that he was ineffectively assisted at his initial habeas hearing, but that there were multiple constitutional violations, Brady violations, Youngblood violations, NAPU violations. However, the court, because of the mandate from the Court of Appeals, could only say that he was ineffectively assisted. The judge did add that had I heard this evidence at the initial hearing, I would have, not could have, would have ruled differently. Despite all of that, the Court of Appeals has sent it back to the trial court for us to have another habeas hearing.
A third hearing.
A third hearing. When we've already proven all these things. Now, we can use the record again, so maybe we can avoid a hearing, but that is the back and the forth and just dealing with the procedural aspects of the court.
Time and money. Time and money. I think we have time for One more question, yes.
May I please? I've heard you say that you only have 8 people or limited number, and what would help you?
Eight paid staff. We have 9
Eight
people on the
paid,
team total.
Okay. Well, and also you said what would really help that we could do here in the audience is that you need money. How do we do that? How do we contribute? How do we get the money to you?
I promise I did not, this is not a plan. We did not discuss this beforehand.
And I appreciate,
Yeah.
all the things that you all are going through, especially when you leave your heart in in a case like that, and I hear that, because I would kind of, I wanted to volunteer, but some of the things you all are saying, don't think so. But I can willingly make donations, contributions.
Well, that's the perfect question to end on from the audience. We will answer that shortly, truly. People are going to talk to you about the website. We're going to be a little careful. We got to be a bit. We're in the library, public space, but I will tell you about the places you can go should you want to know more about helping us in different ways, right? All right, so for our final question for our panelists, Matt, I'll start with you, then Rachel, then our closer. So Matt, what do you want this room to do with what they heard tonight beyond feeling moved by it?
Well, follow the leader right there. Thank you so much for that question. The funds help, but I think what also helps is to go out and talk about it. Take our materials, get on our website. There's a lot of information on our website. Talk to your neighbors about it. Talk to your colleagues about it. Spread the word of what we've talked to you tonight about. If you have a community group that you think we would be good to come and talk to, contact us. We'll come out and do the same show we did tonight for any group of people who want to listen. I think the more people that know what the steep uphill battle is in Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa is, the better, because the more people will get involved and will get behind this effort.
I would say I hope that you remember Rodney's story, of course. He's an incredible individual, and his story deserves to be heard and to be known about. But I also hope that you can remember that there are hundreds and hundreds of other people like Rodney who right now, while we're sitting in this room, are currently incarcerated for crimes they did not commit. Right? There are so many more of those stories that we want to be able to tell. And the only way we can continue to do that, we can tell those stories, is to have your assistance. So no matter what that looks like, if it's financial support, if it's volunteering, if it's, as Matt said, just telling people in your life about this work and why it matters, we need you. And I hope you remember that.
And I'm sorry, I know I'm going out of turn, but
Unbelievable.
Rachel prompted something in me. So the harm in a wrongful conviction is not just to the person who is wrongfully serving time, because what happens when the system gets it wrong, they stop investigating, which means the victim doesn't have justice, and someone who has committed a crime and gotten away with it is still in our community. So I find it's helpful to emphasize that to people, because the harm that Rodney suffered, that Lamar suffered being wrongfully incarcerated, is immense. And I don't think you can ever put it into words. You can properly put it into words, but there are other people who are harmed by a wrongful conviction besides the people who are sitting in prison.
Rodney, I'm going to say this because I want you to have the final word. So to your question earlier, to what Matt just said, if you go to our website, themip.org, again, go to our table over there. There's Ben and Molly. We'll be hovering around to answer any questions. Go to our website. There are plenty of ways where you can see different ways that you can support us. Money is always important, but like we said, there are so many misconceptions from decades or history of movies, TVs, and books that makes it seem as if, well, you're innocent, so you walk right out. And I think I heard all the gasps and the ahs tonight when you realized just how broken the system is. We're working really, really hard to change our criminal legal system into a criminal justice system, but it's not there yet. Rodney, last word.
I think Matt and Rachel has the secret. Talk to people. Next time you walk out to your fence to say hello to your neighbor, say, do you know anything about wrongful convictions? And watch their face. It could be something you've never seen before. Because people don't know about wrongful convictions. And the majority of the people out there don't want to know. Because if they do know, they have to get involved. Every person in this room tonight wants to know. How do I know that? You're in this room tonight. That's telling me you want to know. Just this group in this room could make a world of difference in a lot of lives. There are people sitting in prison whose own families has left them, forgotten about. They have no friends. All they have is fellow inmates, and they don't like them. They don't trust them, and they want to hurt them. That's not the way to live your life. I've been in prison 36 years, 9 days on this wrongful conviction. Now, I want to tell you something real quick that I mentioned to tell you. In 6 days, I'm going to turn 82 years old. August the 19th is my birthday. August the 20th, I will have 1 day more as a free man than what I served in prison. And I'm very, very happy about it. Yeah, talk. Talk to everybody. Find out who the chief of police is. Ask them a question. What are you doing to help prevent wrongful conviction? Talk to the prosecutor, the defense attorney. Talk to everybody and anybody. If you ride the bus to work, talk to the bus driver. They always want to talk. Talk about it, and results will happen.
It's hard to follow that up, right? Such amazing. Please, let's give another round of applause to the Midwest Innocence Project and Mr. Rodney Lincoln. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. And like Mr. Lincoln said, we have to talk about it, right? It doesn't stop here. You got a chance to hear one. You know, you got a chance to hear one that was able to get that justice with an organization like the Midwest Innocence Project. Think of how many, like they said, they have 900 on the waiting list. And that's just in this region. We're only talking about 5 states, right? That's only in this region, let alone if we talk about all around the country. So now we have been directly impacted. We can no longer say we don't have the knowledge. There's the evidence right there. You know what I mean? We seen it, we heard it, we felt them. And what did he tell us? He gave us an actionable direction, instruction. The brother said, let's talk about it. So with that being said, thank you so much. I want to thank the amazing vocalist, Lana Ray, please. The amazing keyboardist, songwriter, producer, Ryan Marquez, please look him up. He just had an album drop. I want to give so much of a special thanks to Miranda and Nicole here at the St. Louis County Library. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm talking about they were so gracious and they accommodated everything. I have to give another special shout out to my family, Unlock Labs, the wonderful staff at Unlock Labs, Chris Santillion, who got up here to speak. I mean, so many of them, but I have to give an extra shout out within Unlock Labs. She was unable to be here, but the person that's responsible for bringing all of us, and they all shaking their heads, man, I wish y'all would get a chance to meet her, but if we continue to work, you will meet her. Her name is Rosa Meyer. She works at Unlock Labs, and it was her vision that put all of this together. So please give a special round of applause for her. But hold up. But listen, when she wasn't able to be here, she left in the middle of the week. One other person from Unlock Labs stepped in and handled everything, and that is Miss Andrea in the back. Please give her, Andrea, thank you. We couldn't have did it without you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And like Tahir said, please take the time to visit these tables. I see Keyway. I forgot your name, I'm sorry. I'll know it after this. We got Molly over there at the Midwest Innocence Project and this wonderful staff of people. Unlock Labs back there, get you some snacks, network, talk to people that feel the same way that you feel. And we thank you so much for coming out here, y'all. Give everybody a round of applause, even yourselves, y'all.